The events described in this account are based on interviews, documents, and investigation conducted between 2023 and 2024. Some names and identifying details have been altered to protect sources. The FBI declined to confirm or deny the existence of an arrangement with Anthony Russo. The Colombo crime family organization declined to comment. Anthony Russo, if alive, has not been located. His current status is unknown. This is not fiction. This is a reconstruction based on available evidence. And somewhere, someone knows exactly where the truth is buried. The envelope was waiting on my desk when I got back from lunch. No postmark, no return address, just my name typed on the front. Rachel Keller, in a font I didn't recognize, slightly off-center, like someone had used an old typewriter with a loose carriage. Inside was a single photograph and a handwritten note on lined paper torn from a spiral notebook. The photograph showed a man in his 70s, sitting at an outdoor cafe, coffee cup in hand, smiling at someone off camera. He had thinning white hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and a face that looked like it had seen things. The kind of face you see on men who've survived wars or prisons or lives they don't talk about. The note said, "This man died in 1987. Ask yourself why he's having breakfast in Scottsdale last Tuesday." I turned the photo over. On the back, written in the same handwriting, his name was Anthony Russo. Now it's something else, and the people who think they killed him 36 years ago are still looking. I sat down at my desk in the cramped offices of the Phoenix Investigator, a weekly newspaper that had been dying slowly for the last decade but somehow kept limping along, and I stared at that photograph for a long time. Because I knew the name Anthony Russo. Everyone who'd ever covered organized crime in America knew that name. Anthony, Tony Red, Russo was a caporegime, a captain, in the Colombo crime family in New York City. A made man, an enforcer who'd worked his way up through the ranks in the 1970s, known for being smart, brutal, and loyal to a fault. He'd been involved in loan sharking, gambling, labor racketeering, and at least 3 murders that the FBI suspected but could never prove. And in 1987, Tony Russo was killed. Shot 5 times in the parking lot of a social club in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, on a cold February night. The hit was clean, professional. 2 shooters, no witnesses who'd talk, no suspects ever arrested. The newspapers said it was an internal Colombo family dispute. The FBI said it was payback for a botched deal. The streets said Tony had crossed the wrong people. His funeral was closed casket. They buried him at Greenwood Cemetery. His wife became a widow. His 3 children lost their father. And now someone was telling me he'd been having breakfast in Scottsdale, Arizona last Tuesday. I picked up the phone. "My name is Rachel Keller. I'm 47 years old. I've been a crime reporter for 22 years. Started at a small paper in New Jersey, moved to Philadelphia, then Phoenix 5 years ago when my marriage fell apart and I needed a new start in a place where nobody knew me. I specialize in stories other reporters don't want to touch. The ones that take months to develop. The ones where sources disappear before you can get them on record. The ones that sometimes get you followed home. I'm telling you this because you need to understand, I don't believe things just because someone puts an envelope on my desk. I've been handed fake documents, doctored photos, and elaborate lies more times than I can count. This job has made me professionally paranoid, but there was something about that photograph. Something about the handwriting on that note. Something about the specificity of it. Scottsdale last Tuesday, that made me think, this isn't random. Someone went to a lot of trouble to get this to me. And people don't go to that kind of trouble unless they want something very specific to happen. The question was, what did they want? And why me? I called Eddie Morales. Eddie's a retired NYPD detective who worked organized crime in Brooklyn for 28 years. We'd collaborated on a story about police corruption in the Bronx back when I was in Philadelphia. He owed me a favor. More importantly, he was one of the few people I knew who'd remember the details of the Tony Russo case from 1987. He answered on the 3rd ring. Voice like gravel, permanently damaged from 30 years of smoking. "Rachel, Long time. I need to ask you about someone. Always business with you. Never. How you doing, Eddie? How's the grandkids? How are the grandkids? Terrors. What do you need? Anthony Russo. Colombo family. Killed in 87. Long pause. I could hear him breathing, could almost see him sitting in his apartment in Queens, probably watching a ball game with the sound off, trying to decide how much to tell me. Why you asking about Tony Red? Someone sent me something. A photograph. Claims he's alive. Another pause, longer this time. Where are you right now? My office. Get out of there. Go to a public place. Coffee shop, whatever. Call me back from a different phone. And Rachel, don't tell anybody what you just told me. Not yet. He hung up. I sat there for maybe 10 seconds, feeling my pulse starting to accelerate the way it does when a story shifts from interesting to dangerous. Then I grabbed my bag, pocketed the photograph and the note, and left the building. I drove to a Starbucks 3 miles away in Tempe, used the payphone, yes, they still exist if you know where to look, and called Eddie's cell from a number he wouldn't recognize. Talk to me, he said without preamble. What's going on, Eddie? Tony Russo was a special case. Not just another mob hit. There were always questions about that killing. Things that didn't add up. Like what? Like the body. Closed casket, right? Family said he was too shot up to have an open casket. But the medical examiner's report, and I saw this, I was there when they opened the file, said the wounds were actually pretty clean. 2 shots to the chest, 1 to the head, 2 to the abdomen. Lethal, sure, but not disfiguring, not the kind of damage that requires a closed casket. So why closed casket? That's the question nobody wanted to ask at the time. The family wanted it that way. The funeral home complied. Nobody pushed back, because in that world, you don't question these things. You bury people and you move on. You think it wasn't him in that casket? I think there were rumors. Quiet rumors, the kind that don't go in official reports. I had a confidential informant back then, guy named Paulie Messina, low-level associate, not made but close to people who were, and about 6 months after the funeral. Paulie tells me something weird. He says there were people in the family who thought Tony got out. That the whole hit was staged. That he cut a deal with somebody, FBI, marshals, who knows, and they faked his death to get him into witness protection. Why would the family help him fake his death if he was going into witness protection? That's the thing. If it was witness protection, the family wouldn't help. They'd kill him for real. But Paulie said it wasn't witness protection. He said it was something else. Something off the books. He said there were people in the government who wanted Tony alive more than they wanted him dead. And there were people in the family who agreed to let him walk. For a price. What price? Paulie didn't know, or wouldn't say. And then Paulie ended up dead himself 6 weeks later. Drug overdose, officially, but Paulie wasn't using. He'd been clean for 3 years. I was writing this down on a napkin with a pen that barely worked. Eddie, if Tony Russo faked his death with help from both the mob and the government, that means there's a conspiracy that goes back 36 years. That means there are people who've been lying about this since 1987. That means you're walking into something very bad, Rachel. That means you need to be extremely careful about who you talk to and what you publish. Because if Tony's alive, and if powerful people have been keeping that secret for 3.5 decades, they're not gonna be happy about someone like you asking questions. Do you know anyone who might know more? Anyone from back then who's still alive and might talk? He was quiet for a long time. There's one guy, name's Frank Pellegrino, used to be an FBI agent working organized crime in the 80s and 90s. Retired now, lives somewhere in Florida. He was one of the agents investigating the Colombo family when Tony was killed. If anyone knows what really happened, it'd be Frank. But Rachel, Frank doesn't talk. He's been approached by journalists, by writers, by documentary filmmakers. He never talks, ever. Give me his number anyway. I don't have his number, but I know someone who might. Let me make a call. I'll get back to you. He hung up. I sat in that Starbucks for 2 hours, drinking terrible coffee, staring at the photograph of the old man in Scottsdale, and thinking, if this is real, if Anthony Russo really is alive, then this is the biggest story I'll ever touch. And it might be the last one. Frank Pellegrino lived in a gated community in Naples, Florida. Took me 3 days to track him down after Eddie gave me a lead through a mutual contact. He didn't have a listed phone number. His address wasn't in any public database. But I have a researcher I work with sometimes, a woman named Claire who's frighteningly good at finding people who don't want to be found, and she got me an address. I didn't call ahead. Experience has taught me that people like Frank Pellegrino don't say yes on the phone. They say no, or they hang up, or they threaten to call the cops. But if you show up at their door, if you make it personal, if you look them in the eye and tell them why it matters, sometimes they talk. I flew to Fort Myers, rented a car, drove to Naples. Expensive town, retirees with money, golf courses and yacht clubs and houses that cost more than most people make in a lifetime. Frank's place was in a community called Pelican Bay, behind a guardhouse with a polite but firm security guard who asked me my business. I said I was there to visit a friend. Gave Frank's name. The guard called up to the house. "Ma'am, Mr. Pellegrino says he's not expecting anyone. Tell him I'm here about Anthony Russo. Tell him I have information he needs to see." The guard relayed this. Pause. "Then, he says you can come up. 10 minutes. That's all he's giving you." I drove through. Found the address. 2-story house. Spanish tile roof. Palm trees in the front yard. Knocked on the door. Frank Pellegrino answered. 74 years old according to the records Claire had pulled. Looked like a man who'd been carrying heavy things for a very long time. Gray hair. Still thick. Face like leather. Eyes that assessed you in about 2 seconds and made a decision about whether you were worth his time. "You're the reporter," he said. "Rachel Keller. You've got 8 minutes left. Start talking." I showed him the photograph. Told him about the envelope. Told him what Eddie had told me about the rumors, about Polly Messina, about the closed casket. Frank looked at the photo for a long time. His expression didn't change. When he looked up, his eyes were hard. "Where did you get this?" "Someone left it on my desk. Anonymously." "And you came all the way to Florida because of an anonymous tip and a photo that could be anyone?" "Eddie Morales told me you were the one person who might know the truth. He said if Tony Russo really is alive, you'd know. Eddie's a good man, but he talks too much." Frank handed the photo back to me. Started to close the door. "He's alive, isn't he?" I said quickly. "You know he's alive." Frank stopped. Didn't open the door wider, but didn't close it either. "What do you want, Miss Keller?" "I want to know what happened. I want to know why a man who was supposedly killed by the mob in 1987 is having breakfast in Arizona in 2023. I want to know who helped him disappear and why. And I want to know who's been lying about it for 36 years. Frank studied me for a long moment. Then he stepped back and opened the door wider. "You've got more than 8 minutes now. Come inside, and put your phone in that bowl by the door. No recordings." Frank's living room was neat, spare, impersonal. The kind of place where a man lives alone and doesn't have visitors. He offered me water. I accepted. We sat in chairs facing each other, and he didn't waste time. "Anthony Russo didn't die in 1987, he said. "The man they buried wasn't him. It was a homeless guy from Coney Island named Dennis Kowalski. Heroin addict. No family, no records, nobody who'd come looking. Tony's people found him, OD'd him, put 2 bullets in him post-mortem to match the story, and put him in Tony's casket." I felt the air go out of the room. Why? Because Tony had something the FBI wanted. He had knowledge of a financial operation that went way beyond the Colombo family. We're talking about a money laundering network that moved hundreds of millions of dollars through legitimate businesses, banks, real estate companies, investment firms, all fronted by people with no obvious mob ties. Tony was the architect of that network. He built it in the late 70s and early 80s, and by 87, it was moving so much money that it wasn't just a mob operation anymore. It was a national security issue. How? Because some of that money was coming from foreign sources. Drug cartels in Colombia, arms dealers in the Middle East, people we were very interested in. And Tony knew the whole structure. Names, accounts, routes, everything. And he came to us in January of '87 and said he wanted to make a deal. Witness protection? No, Tony didn't want witness protection. He didn't want to testify. He wanted to disappear, completely. No new identity tied to the Marshal's service, no government oversight, no check-ins. He wanted out of the life, but he wanted it on his terms. And you said yes? Frank looked uncomfortable. I didn't. My bosses did, over my objections, because Tony's information was that valuable. He gave us the network. We dismantled it over the next 3 years. Dozens of arrests, billions in assets seized. It was one of the biggest organized crime cases of the 90s. But the price was that Tony got to walk away, fake his own death, disappear, and we had to help him do it. How? We arranged the body. We made sure the forensics were sloppy enough that nobody looked too close. We coordinated with certain people in the Colombo family, people who had their own reasons for wanting Tony gone but didn't want the publicity of a real hit. We gave Tony a new identity, cash, and a directive: stay invisible. Don't contact anyone from your old life. Don't commit crimes. Live quietly. And if you ever surface, the deal's off and you're on your own. And he's followed those rules for 36 years? As far as I know. Until now. What do you mean, until now? Frank leaned forward. Someone took that photograph. Someone knows where he is. And someone sent it to you. That's not random. That's intentional. Somebody's trying to expose him. Who? That's what you need to figure out. And when you do, you need to ask yourself, why now? What changed? Why is someone breaking 3 decades of silence to put Tony back in the spotlight? I stayed in Florida for 2 more days. Asked Frank every question I could think of. He gave me names, some of the FBI agents who'd worked the case, some of the mob associates who'd been part of the operation. Most were dead, a few were still alive but unreachable. One name stood out: Vincent, Vinny the Rat, Catalano. Former Colombo associate, never made, but close enough. He'd been one of the people who'd helped stage Tony's death, according to Frank. And Vinny was still alive, still in New York, still connected to people who mattered. Vinny's not gonna talk to you, Frank said. He's old school. He doesn't trust reporters. He doesn't trust anyone. Will he talk to you? I haven't spoken to Vinny in 20 years. But I can try. Frank made the call, put it on speaker. Vinny answered on the 4th ring. Voice like sandpaper and cigarettes. Who's this? Frank Pellegrino. Long pause. Frank. Jesus. You still alive? Barely. You? Same. What do you want? I need to ask you about Tony Russo. The pause this time was longer and heavier. Tony's dead. We both know that's not true, Vinny. Frank, don't do this. Don't open that door. Someone already opened it. There's a reporter here with me. Someone sent her a photo of Tony. Recent photo. In Arizona. Someone's trying to put him back in play. Who? That's what I need to know. And I think you know. Vinny was quiet for a long time. Then, tell your reporter to come to New York. There's a bakery in Bensonhurst, 18th Avenue and 74th Street. Cafe Johnny. Tell her to be there Friday at noon. Alone. I'll talk to her. Once. And then we're done. The line went dead. I flew to New York on Thursday. Stayed in a hotel in Brooklyn. Didn't tell anyone where I was. Spent the night going through everything I'd gathered so far, the photograph. Frank's testimony. My notes from Eddie. Building a timeline. January 1987. Tony Russo approaches the FBI with an offer. Information in exchange for disappearance. February 1987. Tony killed in Bensonhurst. Fake body in casket. Real Tony vanishes. 1987 to 2023. Tony lives under a new identity somewhere in the American Southwest, presumably Arizona. Stays invisible. 2023. Someone photographs him in Scottsdale. Someone sends that photo to me. Question: who took the photo? Who sent it? What do they want? I couldn't answer those questions yet, but I had a feeling Vinny was about to give me a piece of the puzzle. Friday at noon I was at Cafe Johnny, small Italian bakery, smell of espresso and fresh bread, old men playing cards at corner tables. I ordered a coffee I didn't drink and sat at a table near the back. Vinny showed up at 12:15, 78 years old, short, heavy set, wearing a tracksuit and gold chains like it was still 1985. He sat down across from me without preamble. "You're the reporter, Rachel Keller. Frank says you got a picture of Tony." I showed him. He looked at it for a long time, face unreadable. Then he slid it back across the table. "That's him. Older, but that's him." "Where was this taken?" "Scottsdale. Last month. Someone sent it to me anonymously. Someone's trying to kill him." I felt my stomach drop. What? Think about it. Tony's been invisible for 36 years. Suddenly someone finds him, photographs him, and sends the photo to a reporter. That's not exposure for exposure's sake. That's setting him up. You publish a story about Tony Russo being alive. Every wise guy in New York knows where to look. Every old enemy, every grudge, every family that lost money when he disappeared. You put Tony's face in the paper, he's dead within a week. So why send the photo to me? Why not just kill him directly? Because whoever's doing this wants it to look clean. They want someone else to pull the trigger. They want it to look like the mob did it. Like old business getting settled, so nobody looks too close at who really set it up. Who would want Tony dead after all this time? Vinny leaned back in his chair. You gotta understand something about Tony. When he disappeared, he took more than just information. He took money, a lot of money, money that belonged to people in the family, money that was supposed to go to certain people when certain deals closed. Tony vanished, that money vanished. People never forgot. How much money? $12 million. In 1987 money. Would be worth maybe $40 million today. I wrote this down. My hand was shaking slightly. Where's the money now? I don't know. Nobody knows. But if Tony's still alive, the money's probably with him. And there are people, very powerful people, who want it back. Or want to make sure nobody else gets it. Who? Vinny looked at me like I'd just asked him to name the president. You really want me to give you names? You really want to know who in the Colombo family has been waiting 36 years for a chance to get that money back? Yes, he shook his head. You got balls, kid. I'll give you that, but I'm not giving you names. You want names, you figure it out yourself. What I'll tell you is this, there's a guy. Runs things now in the Colombo family. Quiet guy, doesn't do interviews, doesn't make news. But he's connected, and he's old enough to remember Tony. And I heard, just rumors, you understand. I heard that somebody came to him recently. Somebody with information about where Tony is. And I heard that this guy, this boss, he's very interested. What's his name? I'm not giving you that. Then what good is this conversation? Vinny stood up. The good is that now you know what you're dealing with. You're not dealing with a story. You're dealing with people who kill for a living. And if you're not careful, you're gonna be part of the story instead of the one writing it. He walked out. I spent the next week doing what I do. Digging. Building a profile of the current Colombo family structure, trying to identify who Vinny had been talking about. Cross-referencing old mob cases with current indictments. Looking for names that appeared in both. One name kept coming up, Mikey Baglioni. 62 years old, current acting boss of the Colombo family since the previous boss was imprisoned in 2019. Mikey had been around since the 80s. Not flashy. Not the kind of guy who got his name in the papers. But respected, feared, connected, and according to multiple sources I found through court documents and FBI surveillance reports that had been declassified, Mikey had been close with Tony Russo back in the day. They'd run operations together, they'd made money together, and when Tony disappeared, Mikey had been one of the people who'd lost the most. I needed to talk to him. But you don't just call a mob boss and ask for an interview. You need an intermediary, someone who can vouch for you, someone he trusts enough to take the meeting. I called Vinny, left a message, didn't hear back. I called Eddie, Told him what I'd found. He said, "Rachel, you're playing with fire. Mikey Baglioni is not someone you want to be on the radar of. I need to talk to him." Why? Because I think he's the one who's trying to expose Tony. I think he's the one who sent me that photograph. And I think he's doing it because he wants Tony dead and he wants me to be the mechanism. Eddie was quiet. If that's true, then you walking into a meeting with Mikey is walking into a trap. Maybe, but it's the only way to know for sure. Let me make some calls. I'll see what I can do. But Rachel, if you do this, you do it in public. Somewhere with witnesses. And you don't go alone. The meeting happened 2 weeks later. A restaurant in Little Italy, Manhattan. Publicly visible, plenty of witnesses, lunch hour crowd. Eddie came with me, sat at a different table, close enough to intervene if things went wrong, far enough away to give me space. Mikey Baglioni showed up with 2 guys. Big, quiet, standing by the door. Mikey sat down across from me. Well-dressed, calm, polite. "Miss Keller, I hear you've been asking about me." "I've been asking about Anthony Russo. Tony's dead." "We both know that's not true." Mikey's expression didn't change. "What do you want?" "I want to know why you sent me his photograph." "I didn't send you anything." "Someone did, and that someone has access to Tony, knows where he is, and wants the world to know. That's a very specific set of circumstances. And you're one of the very few people with motive." Mikey leaned back. "You think I want Tony dead?" "Yes, you're right, I do. Tony took something from me. From a lot of people. And for 36 years, I thought he was dead. I mourned him. I went to his funeral. I told his kids I was sorry for their loss. And then, about 6 months ago, I found out the truth. I found out he's alive. Living in Arizona. Comfortable. Happy. While I'm here, still in this life, still dealing with the same bullshit, still looking over my shoulder. Yeah, I want him dead. But I didn't send you that photograph." "Then who did?" "That's what I want to know. Because someone's playing games. And when people play games in this world, people die. I didn't send you the photo because I don't need you. If I wanted Tony dead, I'd send someone to do it. Quiet, professional, done. But somebody wants this to be public. Somebody wants Tony's face in the papers. And I want to know who. Because whoever it is, they're using you. And they're using me." I stared at him. "You think someone's setting us both up?" "I think someone wants Tony exposed and they want it to look like I did it. Which means after Tony's dead, I'm next. Either the feds come for me for murder, or the family blames me for breaking omerta, or both. Either way, I'm done. So no, Miss Keller, I didn't send you that photograph. But I sure as hell want to know who did." That conversation changed everything. If Mikey wasn't behind the photograph, then someone else was. Someone with access to Tony, knowledge of his past, and a motive to expose him that went beyond simple revenge. I started thinking about who else might benefit from Tony's death becoming public. The FBI? Maybe. If Tony had violated the terms of his deal, they might want him gone but couldn't do it themselves without admitting they'd helped him fake his death in the first place. Another crime family? Possible. The Columbos weren't the only family Tony had crossed over the years. Someone from Tony's old life? A former associate, a betrayed partner, someone with a grudge that had festered for 36 years? Or, and this was the possibility that kept nagging at me, someone close to Tony now. Someone in his current life. Someone who knew who he really was and had reasons of their own to want him dead. I needed to go to Scottsdale. I needed to find Tony myself. I flew back to Phoenix. Drove to Scottsdale. The photograph had been taken at an outdoor cafe, and I could identify the location from the background. A shopping plaza on Scottsdale Road, upscale area, lots of retirees with money. I spent 3 days sitting in that plaza, watching. Looking for an old man who matched the photo. Didn't see him. Asked around at the cafe, showed the photo to staff. Nobody recognized him. Either he was a one-time visitor or he'd been careful not to come back after being photographed. I was about to give up when I got another envelope. This one was slipped under my hotel room door. Same typewriter font, same handwriting inside. The note said, You're looking in the wrong place. He's not in Scottsdale anymore. He's in Sedona, and he knows you're looking." There was a new photograph. Same man, different setting. This time he was at a trailhead in what looked like Red Rock country. Sedona. The photo was dated 3 days ago, and in the bottom corner, barely visible, was something I hadn't noticed in the first photo. A reflection in a car window behind him. The reflection of the person taking the photograph. I zoomed in on my phone. The reflection showed a woman. Middle-aged, dark hair, expensive-looking sunglasses. And I recognized her, because I'd seen her before. At the restaurant in New York where I'd met Mikey. Sitting 2 tables away, reading a magazine, seemingly paying no attention. But now that I thought about it, she'd left right after we did. And before that, at the airport in Naples when I'd flown to meet Frank Pellegrino. Standing in line at the coffee shop, far enough away that I hadn't thought twice about it. Someone had been following me, documenting my investigation, and that someone was now the person sending me photographs. The question was, who was she, and what did she want? I have a colleague, a photographer named Marcus who does freelance work for various publications, who's exceptionally good at identifying people from partial images. I sent him the zoomed-in reflection, asked if he could clean it up, enhance it, maybe run it through facial recognition databases. He got back to me in 2 days. Got a hit. Woman's name is Diane Russo. Age 49, lives in Scottsdale, works as a real estate agent. And Rachel. Check this out. Her maiden name was Diane Petrillo. And her father was Thomas Petrillo, a Colombo family associate who did 20 years in federal prison for racketeering. He died in 2015. Is she related to Tony Russo? Not by blood, but I did some digging. Diane Petrillo married a man named Robert Russo in 1998. They divorced in 2005. Robert Russo is Tony Russo's son. I sat back in my chair, feeling pieces of the puzzle starting to connect. Tony's daughter-in-law, ex-daughter-in-law, right, and here's the interesting part, according to divorce records I pulled. The divorce was contentious, custody battle over their daughter. Robert accused Diane of being an unfit mother due to substance abuse. Diane counter-accused Robert of financial fraud and emotional abuse. It was ugly, and in the deposition, this is public record, by the way, Diane made a statement that she was tired of living in the shadow of a ghost. Those were her exact words. She knew Tony was alive. Seems like it, and she wasn't happy about it. I needed to talk to Diane, but I also needed to be careful. If she was the one sending me the photographs, she'd been orchestrating this from the beginning. And I didn't know why. I found her real estate office. Called, left a message saying I was interested in properties in Sedona and had been referred by a mutual acquaintance. She called back within an hour. This is Diane Russo. You're interested in Sedona? Yes, I'm looking for something quiet. Private. I was told you specialize in that kind of property. I do. Would you like to meet? I can show you some listings. That would be perfect. We arranged to meet the following day at her office in Scottsdale. I brought a voice recorder. Hid it in my purse. Diane Russo was elegant, composed, professional. Her office was sleek, modern, filled with photos of luxury homes. She shook my hand with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Ms. Keller, please, sit. Tell me what you're looking for. Privacy. A place where someone can disappear. The smile froze for just a fraction of a second. Then she recovered. Disappear? That's an interesting way to put it. I'm a journalist, Ms. Russo. I'm not actually looking for property. I'm looking for information about your former father-in-law. Her face went very still. I don't know what you're talking about. I put the photograph on her desk. The one from Sedona. The one with her reflection. You took this. You've been sending me photographs of Tony Russo. You've been following my investigation. And I want to know why. For a long moment, she just stared at the photo. Then she looked up at me, and her expression was something I hadn't seen before. Not anger, not fear, something harder. You want to know why? Because I've been carrying his secret for 25 years. Because I married into a family that was built on a lie. Because my ex-husband is still mourning a father who isn't dead. And it's destroyed him. Because Tony Russo gets to live a nice quiet life in Arizona while the rest of us are still trapped in the wreckage of what he did. And I'm done. I'm done protecting him. So you're exposing him. I'm giving him what he deserves. Attention, scrutiny, the one thing he can't survive. You know, if I publish this, people will come for him. Good, you're signing his death warrant. He signed it himself when he faked his death and abandoned his family. My ex-husband thinks his father was murdered. He's lived with that trauma his whole adult life. And the whole time, Tony's been fine, comfortable, safe, while Robert's been falling apart. I tried to tell Robert the truth years ago. He didn't believe me, called me crazy, said I was trying to poison him against his own family. So I stopped trying to convince him. And I started documenting. I found Tony 2 years ago. Tracked him down through old family connections, through people who owed me favors. I've been watching him, photographing him, waiting for the right moment. Why now? Why send the photos to me? Because you have a reputation. You don't back down. You publish stories other people are afraid to touch. I knew if I gave you this, you'd dig. You'd find the truth. You'd make it public. And once it's public, there's no taking it back. I looked at this woman across her desk, and I saw something I'd seen before in sources who'd been carrying heavy secrets for too long. A kind of exhaustion, a decision to burn everything down because the alternative, continuing to carry the weight, was unbearable. What do you want from me? I asked. I want you to publish the story. I want the world to know Tony Russo is alive. I want his face in every newspaper, every website, every TV screen. I want him to feel what it's like to be exposed. And then I want whatever happens next to happen, even if it gets him killed. Especially if it gets him killed. I left Diane's office with more questions than answers. She'd given me motive, method, and means. She'd confirmed she was the source of the photographs. But she'd also made it clear, she wanted blood. And I had to decide, was I willing to be the instrument of that? I spent 3 days thinking about it. Called Eddie, called Frank, talked to my editor at the Phoenix Investigator, a man named Tom who'd been in the business for 30 years and had seen more ethical dilemmas than most. What's your gut tell you? Tom asked. My gut tells me this story is real. Tony Russo faked his death with help from the FBI. He's been living under a new identity for 36 years. That's a massive story. Government corruption, mob conspiracy, the whole thing. It's exactly the kind of journalism we're supposed to do. But publishing it will get him killed. And I'll be the reason. Tom was quiet for a while. You know what I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you it's not your job to protect him. He made his choices. He faked his death, took $12 million that wasn't his, and walked away from his family. The consequences of that are on him, not you. Your job is to report the truth. Even if the truth kills someone, the truth doesn't kill people. People kill people. If the mob comes for Tony after you publish, that's on them. Not you. I knew he was right. Intellectually, I knew he was right. But there was another part of me, the part that had seen too many sources disappear, too many stories end with funerals, that wasn't sure. I decided to do one more thing before I made a final decision. I decided to talk to Tony himself. Finding him was easier than I'd expected. Diane had given me enough information. The general area where he lived, the fact that he went to certain places regularly, that I was able to track him down in about 4 days. He was living in Sedona under the name Thomas Randall. Nice house in a quiet neighborhood, modest but comfortable. He drove a beige Camry. Went to the same coffee shop 3 mornings a week. Went hiking on the weekends. Lived alone. I approached him at the coffee shop on a Thursday morning. Sat down at his table without asking. Mr. Randall, or should I say Mr. Russo? He looked up from his newspaper, and for a moment, his face went completely blank. Then he recovered, but the damage was done. He knew I knew. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. I'm a journalist. I've been investigating you for 2 months. I know who you are. I know what you did. I know about the fake death, the FBI deal, the money. And I know your former daughter-in-law has been feeding me information because she wants you exposed. He set the newspaper down slowly. His hands were shaking slightly. What do you want? I want to hear your side. Before I publish. You're going to publish? I don't know yet. That's why I'm here. He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, if you publish, I'm dead. You understand that? Yes. And you're okay with that? I'm a journalist. My job is to report the truth. What people do with that truth is not my responsibility. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's a nice way to wash your hands of it. Pontius Pilate would be proud. Tell me why I shouldn't publish. He was quiet for a long time. Then, come to my house. Tonight, 7 o'clock, I'll tell you everything, and then you can decide. I went. I know it was dangerous. I know I should have told someone where I was going. But I didn't, because I wanted to hear what he had to say without interference, without recordings, without anything between me and the truth. Tony's house was quiet, neat, impersonal. The house of a man who'd spent 36 years making sure nothing about him was memorable. He poured us both coffee. We sat in his living room. You want to know why I did it, he said. Why I faked my death? Yes, because I was going to be killed for real. In early 1987, I found out there was a contract on me. Someone in the family, I still don't know who, had decided I knew too much, or I was a liability, or I'd crossed the wrong person. The details didn't matter. What mattered was I had maybe a month before someone put 2 bullets in my head for real. So you went to the FBI. I went to Frank Pellegrino. I'd known Frank for years. We had a relationship, not friendly, but respectful. I told him, I'll give you everything. The whole financial network, every name, every account, every transaction. But I don't want witness protection. I don't want to testify. I want out, completely. And Frank agreed. Frank's bosses agreed. Frank himself didn't like it. But his bosses saw the value. They got the network. They got the arrests. They got the prosecutions. And I got a new life. And $12 million. He smiled slightly. That's what everyone thinks. Everyone thinks I took the money. But I didn't. I gave it back. To who? To the family. As part of the deal. I told them, I'll disappear. I'll stay gone. I won't testify. Won't write a book. Won't go on 60 Minutes. But in exchange, you let me walk. And I'll give you the $12 million as a parting gift. Most of them agreed. Not everyone. There were people who wanted me dead on principle. But enough. Enough to make the fake death work. Then why does Mikey Baglioni think you took the money? Because the people who made the deal with me never told him. They kept it quiet. Mikey wasn't in the inner circle back then. He was mid-level. By the time he found out I was gone, the story was already set. Tony Russo was killed. Tony took the money. End of story. And nobody corrected him. I processed this. So you've been living here for 36 years. Quietly. And now your daughter-in-law wants you dead. Diane's angry. I understand that. My son, Robert, he's had a hard life. Addiction, failed businesses, failed marriage. And Diane blames me for that. Says Robert never recovered from losing his father. Maybe she's right, but I couldn't tell him the truth. I couldn't put that burden on him. So I stayed away, and that made things worse. Do you regret it? He looked at me, and his eyes were tired. Every day, but regret doesn't change what is. I made a choice. I chose life over family. I chose safety over honor. And I've lived with that choice for 36 years. And if you publish your story, I'll die with it. Then give me a reason not to publish. He thought about this for a long time. I can't, he said finally. I can't give you a reason that matters. The story's true. I faked my death. I worked with the FBI. I've been lying about who I am for 3 decades. That's news. That's exactly the kind of thing journalists are supposed to expose. So if you want to publish, publish. I won't stop you. I won't threaten you. I won't beg. I'll just say this, when you write the story, when you put my real name and my new name and my address in print, you're not just exposing me. You're sentencing me, and you need to be okay with that. I left his house at midnight. Drove back to my hotel. Didn't sleep. I wrote the story. Took me 2 weeks. 12,000 words. Every detail I'd gathered, every source I'd interviewed, every document I'd verified. The FBI's involvement, the fake death, the Colombo family's cooperation, Tony's new life, Diane's vendetta. All of it. I titled it, "The Man the Mafia Couldn't Kill: How Anthony Russo Faked His Death and Disappeared for 36 Years." I sent it to my editor. He read it, called me, "This is incredible work, Rachel. Best thing you've ever written. But you know what's going to happen if we publish this?" "Yes, and you're okay with it?" I thought about Tony in his quiet house in Sedona. I thought about his son Robert, who'd spent decades mourning a father who wasn't dead. I thought about Diane, who'd been carrying a secret that had poisoned her. I thought about Mikey Baglioni, who'd been lied to by his own family. I thought about Frank Pellegrino, who'd made a decision 36 years ago that he'd questioned ever since. And I thought about my job, about what journalism is supposed to do, about the responsibility to report the truth even when the truth has consequences. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I think we have to publish anyway." "Okay," Tom said, "then we publish." The story ran on a Sunday. Front page of the Phoenix Investigator, picked up by wire services, syndicated nationally within hours. By Monday morning, it was everywhere. CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post. Everyone ran with it. Mobster who faked death found alive in Arizona. FBI admits to helping organized crime figure disappear. 36-year cover-up exposed. The FBI issued a statement, "We do not comment on operational matters related to ongoing or historical investigations." The Colombo family, through a lawyer, issued a statement, "Mr. Russo's alleged activities and whereabouts are of no concern to our clients." Diane Russo didn't comment publicly, but she sent me an email, "Thank you." And Tony? Tony disappeared. The day after the story published, neighbors in Sedona said his house was empty. His car was gone. No forwarding address. No trail. He'd done it again. Vanished. And I don't know if he's alive or dead. I don't know if he got out before the wrong people found him, or if he's buried somewhere in the desert and nobody's found the body yet. I don't know if he read my story and decided to run one more time, or if someone read my story and decided to finish what they'd started in 1987. I don't know, and that's what keeps me awake at night. It's been 8 months since the story published. I've moved twice. I get emails sometimes from people who claim to have seen Tony, in Oregon, in Montana, in Mexico. I don't follow up. I'm done with that story. But I think about it. I think about the choice I made, about whether I was right to publish. And I think about something Tony said to me that night in his house, "When you write the story, you're not just exposing me. You're sentencing me." I tell myself I'm a journalist. I tell myself my job is to report the truth. I tell myself the consequences aren't my responsibility. But I know that's not entirely true. Because journalism isn't neutral. Every story changes the world in some small way. And sometimes that change involves blood. I exposed Tony Russo. I put his name and face back in the public eye after 36 years. I did it knowing what would happen. And whatever happened to him after that, whatever's still happening, I'm part of it. Not the villain, not the hero, just someone who told the truth and let the consequences fall where they would. And I have to live with that. Just like Tony lived with his choices for 36 years. The difference is, I still have my real name.